IASA has announced an expanded partnership with ECRA to help school districts implement AI solutions. Learn about what that entails and more in this episode of the IASA podcast. Welcome to the IASA podcast. My name is Jason Neville, and I'm Director of Communications. My guest today is Dr. John Gatta. He's the CEO of the ECRA Group, a longtime IASA corporate partner. Our focus today is on AI solutions, specifically AI assistants. ECRA has developed 3 AI assistants to help school districts in the areas of the Illinois School Code, parent questions, and human resources. The latter is pretty expansive, which includes understanding your district's policies and procedures, collective bargaining agreements, and even benefit programs. It's exciting technology with a very practical application for school districts. All right, well, Dr. Gatta, can you just kind of start out by introducing yourself and maybe providing some background on ECRA and its history with supporting school districts and including the AI space?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Jason, for hopping on and doing this podcast. So my name's John Gatta. I am the CEO of ECRA Group. I think many of your listeners may know ECRA Group over the years through a variety of different lenses. But going all the way back, sort of over 40 years ago, we started as an academic research firm, and so school districts back then hired us to do sort of commissioned research projects to help them better understand performance, whether that was to evaluate programs or help them evaluate the impact of strategic plans, or even help identify students that might benefit from certain programs or place them into courses and interventions. But what that did is really gave us sort of our core DNA as a firm, which is really advanced data science. And so over the years, we have always been in the advanced data science business, and particularly focused on the application of advanced data science to support evidence-based practice and school improvement. And so many of your listeners may know us through our use of prediction models for student level data. And so we do a lot of work across Illinois and across the nation in analyzing student data, but trained through prediction models so that we can personalize expectations for students. We can help evaluate programs. We can help place students in interventions. Basically the same stuff we did as commissioned research in the early days, but began automating and began turning sort of evidence-based practice in a way of doing business through these advanced data science and prediction models. And so with the advancement of AI in general, it was a natural evolution for ECRA to expand our modeling expertise beyond just the quantitative student data and begin to model more qualitative data in the form of documents or other information sources that school districts have. And so today, we are not only working in the student data space, but also in the modeling of other data that school districts have that can help support leaders.
Well, today's podcast is about IASA's expanded partnership with ECRA. So we're going to learn about some new AI bots that are available to Illinois school districts. But before we kind of focus on sort of the what, I'd like to spend a little bit moment discussing the why. Why and how do you believe that superintendents will find value in these new resources, these AI bots?
Yeah, sure. So, the world is moving at a faster and faster clip, right? And access to information is becoming more and more challenging. I think many of your listeners would agree. I think as leaders of school systems, that access to information is critically important, and that as leaders we make better decisions if we have better access to information. And this even then sort of expands to other stakeholders, such as teachers or support staff, or even parents. And so when you think about what these AI models and the capability of these AI models can do with respect to information access, they're really allowing school districts to go through a fundamental shift. And that shift is, instead of writing documents and preparing all of these resources with the intent that humans are going to interact with them. The shift is that all of our documents, procedures, manuals, policies, right? Those can all go to train an AI assistant that we call them. And then, really, as leaders or other stakeholders, we can just ask questions to a virtual expert, right, that we call AI assistants, and get immediate access to information. And so the problem that ECRA is really trying to solve within schools is not all of the various areas that AI could sort of change the way we operate, but how can we solve the information access problem? So how can we make it easier for a principal to know what's in the collective bargaining agreement? How can we make it easier for parents to know when the next JV volleyball game is, right? How can we make it easier for a teacher to know what their benefits are, in terms of their employment within a district? And that's really the area that we're trying to solve at ECRA.
So let's get into, you kind of alluded to the AI bots there, but let's get into an overview of the different tools and the AI solutions that ECRA is making available. I understand there's going to be something that's sort of free, available in all school districts, but there's also more personalized, customized bots that ECRA is working on.
Yep, sure. So as part of our expanded partnership with IASA to now include these AI models, we went ahead and built a sort of a demonstration of our technology so that districts could have a better sense of what we're talking about as we move to then implement these technologies within their local school district. So the end goal here, and then I'll come back to the sort of the free option. The end goal here is to work within your school district, right, to train these virtual experts that we call AI assistants on various areas related to your district. So that could be related to board policy and board actions. That could be related to human resources. That could be related to courses and pathways. That could be related to parent communication, like a parent concierge. And so the way that this is done is you take all the available information, right, and you train these AI models to be an expert in all of this information, and then you could ask it questions. So you had mentioned that there's a free resource that ECRA's developed for IASA members, and that is we have trained an AI assistant on the entirety of the Illinois School Code. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can get after information related to the Illinois School Code, but we thought it was a great way to both demonstrate our technology, right, and to provide something useful to school leaders in a way that they can start to see the connection with how these models work and how they might leverage this within their school district. So if you go to ecragroup.com/IL school code, you will be presented a chat interface like a ChatGPT interface in which you could ask it anything related to the Illinois School Code, and it will give you answers. And again, I use the word demonstration here because the school code is such a public sort of publicly available documentation. There are other ways that you could get at this, but the purpose of our AI assistant with the school code is to demonstrate how you can streamline all of that and really provide immediate access to questions that you would have about the Illinois School Code. And as you work with that, start to make connections to, wow, I really see how this technology can work. I see how if we were to take all of our local board policies, all of our minutes, all of our agendas, all of the things that sort of govern the school district, the rules of the road, our collective bargaining agreements. And every time one of our leaders or stakeholders have questions about that, they could simply ask a question, such as, what is the district's policy on homework, or when is the last time I presented to the Board of Education on our dual language program, right? The idea here is you can train these AI assistants to truly be experts in areas that just provide it easier access to information. And so board actions and policies is a great example. Human resources is a great example because school districts have a lot of information, not just their collective bargaining agreements, but all of their benefits programs, right? All of their employee handbook, policies, procedures. Imagine being able to, if you are a teacher and just have questions about your benefits, or whether you actually work in the HR department and you want to know exactly what the collective bargaining agreement says, you can simply just ask those questions, and so on and so forth. And you could apply this to curriculum, such as helping students sort of craft personalized 4-year plans within high school by conversing with these AI assistants. And even from parent communication, if you would imagine sort of having a parent concierge that I mentioned a little bit ago. It's, things as simple about what's this week's lunch menu, all the way to what the certain policies, procedures are of the district, and just having immediate answers to those questions.
Take me through the steps. School superintendents listening to this, maybe they listening to this podcast or saw the Leadership Matters article in the last issue. What are the steps once they decide they want to move forward on either a human resources AI assistant or a parent concierge AI assistant?
Yeah, great. So, in terms of, so how do you get started with this? So the first thing I would encourage you to do is go converse with that Illinois school code assistant that we've created, that's freely available, as part of our partnership with IASA, because that will get your mind sort of moving a little bit in terms of, wow, I could really see the usefulness of applying this to to our local school district. Then, once you kind of get your mind around what we're talking about here, the one thing I always tell districts that want to sort of engage in this is you're going to come up with more areas that you could apply this technology to, that you could get off the ground in the immediate future, right? And so the way that I talk to school districts in terms of how to evaluate where to start is, think about an area where you have struggled in the past in terms of making information available to the people that need that, right? So choose an area that's going to have high impact, right? But also choose an area that you believe your internal documentation or your internal data sets are mature enough to train an AI model. And so the reason I say that is, you know, it's easy to think about AI as just this sort of panacea that you can just kind of point it to a website and it's just going to do a phenomenal job answering questions. The truth is that it really doesn't work that way. And in some sense, it exposes some of the inconsistencies or discrepancies, right? Or missing pieces of documentation within school districts. And so there is a part of going through this process that you have to think about, where can this help, but where are we also in a really good position to implement something fast, because we're in a really good spot from a documentation standpoint. And so in all of our work across school districts, now that we're beginning in Illinois, I would say of the 4 that I mentioned, and there's many more beyond that, but of the 4 that I mentioned, which is sort of the board policy and actions, human resources, curriculum, or parent concierge, the 2 that are rising to the top that superintendents are thinking, well, we should really start there because it can have a huge impact, and we're very well documented. One is obviously board actions and policy. School districts, for the most part, are um, um, very formalized with respect to the documentation of their local policies. They, as part of their meeting schedules, they have formal agendas, they have formal meeting minutes. So that's an easy one to come in and say, okay, we have all this information. Let's train up an expert that can answer questions. And then the other one is human resources, because of the nature of human resources and the degree that it is governed by federal and state law. That most districts are in a really good spot with respect to human resources. So when you think about the collective bargaining agreements or employee handbooks or benefits documentation, it provides a great starting point to say, okay, we have all this information. Now let's train an AI assistant, and then that will be much more accessible for people to just converse with and ask questions. As we start to get into some of the other areas like curriculum or parent communication, those are areas that there's a lot of variability among school districts. Some school districts have that all sort of neat and tidy in one spot, but other school districts, that information is a little bit more decentralized, maybe in different sites, school by school, as opposed to district level. And so they're noticing that maybe that's not the place to start, we want to grow into that, but maybe we need to get all that information organized before we sort of train these AI assistants.
Are any of these bots currently being used in any Illinois schools? And if so, kind of what has the feedback been?
Yeah. So the thing is this is ECRA's been working on this technology for a long time, but in terms of implementing that, this is brand new this school year. But that said, there are school districts in Illinois that we are actively working with and developing the models that we're talking about. And I'm just going to name a few just to identify some, but there's many more behind this. And so we're working with Barrington District 220. We're working with North Shore District 112, Leiden District 212, Downers Grove 99, Township High School 214. These are just a few examples of districts that we're working with to advance this sort of approach in making information more accessible. And we're working on, of the four that I mentioned, we have examples of each one of those being implemented.
Once a school district decides to move forward, can you just kind of talk about how community members or staff members would be able to access sort of the AI bot? Is it a link posted on a website or is it an app? How is the app accessible to others?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jason. So, in addition to the actual, technology of being able to train up these models, efficiently and economically, and then deploy them, is ECRA has solved a few other pain points as it relates to making these types of AI assistants available or implemented within school districts. And so that is this broader idea of permissioning and this broader idea of building these AI assistants, but then being able to control in a very granular way, right, how you access these assistants. And so you could access these assistants in a very secure environment by, logging into a website, and it knows who you are, and it knows what role you are within the district, and it knows that you are permissioned to interact with certain assistants but not other assistants. So that would be sort of from an authenticated platform, and you would be presented with an interface like a sort of ChatGPT interface, but that would be in an authenticated environment. So that's one way that you could access these assistants if you don't want everybody to have access to all assistants because of the nature of the data that those assistants have been trained on. But that could go all the way to just having them publicly available. And so the Illinois School Code is an example of that, of where when you build these assistants, you decide who gets access to it. So it could be one person, or it could be just publicly available, and you get a link, and then you could take that link and integrate it into your internal portal systems, or you could put it on your public website, right? Or you could integrate it into other applications even that you have if you wanted to make it sort of inside of other apps that you have. But the other really exciting feature of our approach with respect to these AI assistants is we have also linked this permissioning system to emailing. And so what we know about school leaders in general, and I would argue that the general public is this way too, is we do a lot of our work through conversations over email. And so every single district AI assistant or virtual expert that we create, we assign an email address as if it's a real person. So if you are credentialed to interact with that assistant, you could log into the system, and converse with it over the web, or you could simply just send an email, right? And you could just send an email, and that AI assistant is going to send an email back with your answers, and you could just have a conversation going back and forth on an email thread like you would any other real person. And you can even try this feature out with the example of the Illinois School Code assistant that we had talked about. So if you want to go to ecragroup.com/IL School Code, you can converse with it online. But you can also just send an email to ilschoolcode@ecragroup.ai. Just send an email, ask it a question that you want to know about the school code. You'll get a response back. And if you want to ask a follow-up question, you can reply, and you can have a conversation just like you would a normal person.
I want to ask school about how the bots continue to learn. So if a school board adopts a new policy after you guys kind of come in and activate it, is the bot able to update and learn the new policies?
Yes. So the quick answer to that is yes. The more nuanced answer to that is, we were working um, sort of case by case with our partners meaning the local school districts in determining how we automate that or how we sort of update the training of an AI assistant when things change. So the example that you gave is a great one because that's actually the easiest case, right? So in terms of like school policy or district policy, most of those policies are maintained online in a structured application, and so we can just basically go out and check everybody's policies to see if they've been updated, and if they have been, make sure that the model gets retrained on updated policies. Some of the other areas aren't so simple as you can imagine, right? And so, like if you think about where all the parent information is across a school district, where HR information is across a school district, how curriculum is across a school district. Sometimes it's not so easy to identify like where would we be checking to see if that information has changed. So part of the process that ECRA goes through with school districts is to come up with the way in which we're going to continually operate to make sure that these assistants are up to date.
How is the AI bots that ECRA is producing different than a Chat GPT or a Claude AI?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question, Jason. And I'm going to answer that two ways. One through sort of the foundational technology lens, and then another through the how you leverage that technology and ultimately implement solutions within your local school district. Right. So from a foundational technology standpoint, they're not very different at all. Right. In that the um, generally speaking, right, these large language models, whether you're talking about Google's Gemini or OpenAI's ChatGPT, right, or Claude or Perplexity or now DeepSeek or Grok, or there's becoming more and more large language models that are out sort of available to the public. So from that standpoint, there's not much difference at all. The main difference is how do you leverage that technology to actually create solutions for your local school district, and that's where there's a lot of differences. And so I'm just going to highlight, I would say, what are the three main differences that I think school districts recognize once I articulate them. So the first piece is the data that's available for training, right? And so if you were to just go on to a chat gpt, or you were to go on to a Gemini or things, there are some questions that you could ask it, even about your school district potentially, that are super public and have been public for a very long time, that probably that's been encoded into their parameters that they'd be able to answer. But there's a whole lot of additional data sets and information, things that are more internal to your school district that it would know nothing about. And so the ability to be able to train these custom AI assistants on a much more localized set of data, local data sets, local documents, things that those models wouldn't necessarily have access to, is one of the big differentiating features. The other second main differentiating feature is that you're able to permission these assistants in a very granular way. So one of the problems that's produced by if you start training AI assistants on local data that even within your school district, not all stakeholders would have access to, you have to have an authentication and authorization architecture to ensure that you can permission certain assistants to certain roles within a district. Because once you've trained an AI assistant on certain data or documents, then conversing with that AI assistant is essentially the same thing as having access to the underlying data in a lot of ways. And so we've built a very robust permissioning system to ensure that only those that should be interacting with certain assistants are credentialed to do so. And then the last piece is really more of an accessibility piece, and I'm the one example I'm going to give is the email example. So for the most part, unless you're a computer scientist or a programmer or build your own software, for the most part, if you're going to be interacting with these other models, you have to do it through their interfaces. right? Well, with the ECRA solution, you can do it through our interfaces. That's certainly one option, but you can also do it through email, which I've mentioned, and you could also then integrate it um, into other workflows, right, or other applications that you already have. So the that flexibility in terms of how you could access the virtual assistant or the AI assistant is, I think, a big differentiator as well. It's just, there are others, but I think those are the three main points.
How accurate are the AI bots in their responses? I think superintendents might be a little bit concerned. Like, what if the person, when they ask a question, they get bad information, and then how do you sort of course correct on that? Can you kind of speak to the accuracy?
Yeah, absolutely. So um, as many of you have probably realized in your own sort of working with with these kinds of assistants is they're not perfect, right? They don't get it right 100% of the time, but they, generally speaking, are incredibly accurate. And we have found that at ECRA, once we go in and train with local data, again, they are incredibly accurate. But I want to go deeper into this conversation of how do you sort of govern the implementation of these technologies in a way that you have visibility into um, how people are using it, and can engage in a system that allows um, for the tagging of responses, so you can continually train things that are better. So how do we make these models more accurate? So there's the front end and the back end of this. So the front end of this is when ECRA goes in to train a custom AI assistant within a school district, right? Um, we are setting a whole variety of hyperparameters, and we are tuning these models in ways that we are maximizing accuracy. And really what I mean by that is when you develop these assistants, right, you can set probabilities and you can set other knobs such that you tell the AI assistant only to answer if you have a high probability that answer is correct. And so the one symptom that we're noticing early on, because we're erring abundantly on the side of caution here, is we've trained these assistants to decline to answer things that it doesn't have a high probability that that answer is correct, right? So if you are interacting with some of our local AI assistants that we've built for local school districts, you will occasionally get a response back from the assistant saying that that's either outside my expertise, or I don't have a really good answer for that. We recommend that you contact so and so. So that's part of the innate training that we do with these AIs, is to have the AI recognize itself when it's trying to infer too much and decline to answer, and then refer to an actual real person, and we can train the models to be doing that referral process. So that's on the front end. On the back end of things, it's about visibility, right? It's about logging every question that's asked and every answer that it's produced, and getting into, not unlike a data review cycle that you might do with student data or other pieces, right? But getting into the way that you do business to review the logs and review, these are the questions that were asked, these are the answers, in addition to, the flags that users might say that this was not a good answer, flag it, and getting into a continuous quality improvement cycle, so that we can do that reinforcement learning, and we can make sure that we're learning from the times where they may have not have given a perfect answer.
As we bring this podcast to a close, why don't you just, if you could just kind of remind people about how they can get started, and then share any final thoughts you have on this process.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, my final thoughts would be, that this is a really, really exciting time, and I think that there's a whole variety of ways in which you could leverage this technology within your school district. But I would not go at this by trying to extract 100% of the value that you might be able to extract from these kinds of technologies, right? The old 80/20 rule that sort of is pervasive across almost everything in life applies to this as well. And so you want to think about where can we implement this technology that we could extract 80% of the value, right? And that's going to be by identifying those areas of your school districts where access to that information is sometimes difficult because of the volumes of documents or other things that you have to sift through to get answers, right? But that's in really good shape, that you feel good about, right? That it's documented well, right? And then to your point about the safety, not trying to get sort of 100% of all questions answered correctly through the AI assistant, but think, man, if we can get 80% of them answered correctly, and the assistant was smart enough to decline to answer the other 20 and refer it to a person, we've really moved forward. And so I think the insight there is, start small, start an area that you feel really good about, right? And don't worry about getting everything perfect, so long as this AI assistant is recognizing when it can't answer certain questions and is just referring those questions, I think is the way to think about this. And so in terms of tactical ways that you could get started, I'd encourage you to check out the Illinois School Code bot, either by ecragroup.com/IL School Code, or send an email to ilschoolcode@ecragroup.ai. But I would also encourage any superintendent that is listening to this podcast that if you want to have a conversation that's more local to your school district and how you would get started, just reach out to me. I'm very accessible. Email me at johngatta, JOHNGATTA @ecragroup.com. Send me an email. We can hop on a meet. We can talk through sort of what you're thinking, and I can help guide how you might get started.
It's exciting times. I know at ISA we're definitely excited about this partnership with ECRA.
So, well, thanks a lot. We've always enjoyed our partnership with IASA. We've been long-standing partners with IASA, going all the way back to Vision 2020, now Vision 2030, other areas related to evidence-based practice. So we're thrilled that we can expand this partnership to include AI, which is an area that a lot of people are focused on. So thanks, Jason. Thanks to IASA, and till next time.